I am going to start. I'll give a few minutes. I'll do some introduction. We are recording. So for any reason, if you aren't able to make it or you have to leave early, you will have access to that. Hey, Jill, thanks for saying hi. So welcome. My name is Beth Hendler-Grunt, and I am the founder of Next Great Step. And I'm really glad we have this opportunity where I can speak to you as parents, students, grads, concerned family members about this whole process of how to help our young adults launch into an internship or career. And obviously for all the students, I see some of my students are on here as well. So glad that you've joined, because this is for everybody and really enable everyone to give you some value and doing that. So if you're just joining, I would be so grateful if you'd fill out the poll. It's 2 quick questions, just helps me understand what's on your mind, what you're thinking about. That would be great. If you have specific questions that are in mind, I'm going to talk probably for the first 15 minutes or so, but as I'm talking, or even if you have anything now, if you can please put your questions into the Q&A. I will do my very best to answer them during our session this evening. We are recording, so if anyone has to come in and out, or for anyone who wasn't able to make it, we will have access to the link and we will share that after. I also have some of my colleagues on as well who will be sharing some of our resources. So resources such as free resources of how to have a great resume, how to ace your LinkedIn profile, how to do well in the career fair. All once you actually opt into one resource, you get access to all of them. So Rachel, one of our advisors here, will be putting that into the chat, so you have access to that as well. We will also provide information that if you're interested in learning more or having a complimentary consultation with us to see how we can support you, we will put that link in there as well. We will also put the link to my book, and I'll talk about that in a moment, but you'll have access to that through Amazon. But just want to make sure everyone takes a look in the chat in addition to the Q&A, just to make sure that you're checking the resources that we have available to you. All right. So I'm really glad to be able to provide this evening as a resource for you. A little background about me. So I am the founder of Next Great Step. I'm also an Amazon #1 bestseller of my book called The Next Great Step, The Parent's Guide to Launching Your New Grad into a Career. And I'm just so honored and thrilled with how it's been received in terms of really becoming a resource for parents and families and students of understanding this process that can be so complicated and so difficult to navigate, and really providing a clear roadmap on how to do that. I am also in it with you. I am the mom of a class of 2021 grad. He's currently in grad school. And I also have a son who's a junior in college. So I get it. I understand the stress, the worry. I know when our kids don't always want to take our advice. I also know when a young individual is really trying to figure out, what do I do with my life and how do I navigate that? So I'm living it firsthand, and I'm in it with you. So not only as an expert, as a mom as well. So here's my plan of what I'd like to talk about this evening. I'm going to talk about the challenges that we're all seeing, that we're seeing as parents, that we see as students, grads, and what's happening in terms of the job search. I also want to talk about the hiring outlook and what are some industry trends of who is hiring right now, and where may be some spots to take a look at if you're in that position to look for a job. I'm going to offer actionable tips and guidance. I really want to make this useful. And most importantly, I really want to answer your questions and make sure that what is on your mind, you can share through the chat, and that I'm able to address that for you. So please, if you haven't already, put your questions into the Q&A, or if you're just joining, please take the quick poll so I have a sense of who's joining and what's on your mind. That would be fantastic. So, this was supposed to be easy. We send our kids to college, our kids go to college, and the whole idea is that they get a job upon graduation, but it's just not happening the way all of us, parents and students, thought it was going to. Young adults are graduating from college and they're just not necessarily prepared for the job market. 2 million students graduate from college each year. 87% of them believe that they are ready for work, but only 50% of hiring managers agree. And the jobless rate for new grads has surpassed that for all workers every month since January of 2021. The pandemic absolutely did not help. As we know, 2/3 of millennials and Gen Zers who moved back home during the pandemic still live there. And there's a big disconnect between employer expectations for hiring and the skill set that recent grads thought they had for the workplace. Grads are frustrated, they're overwhelmed, they feel stuck, and parents, caregivers are really frustrated as well. Whether we've all collectively helped make this investment for our kids, or maybe we haven't looked for a job in 20 plus years, or maybe our kids just don't want to take our advice. And employers also are frustrated. They need good talent. So we have this collective problem. And here's what each of these groups are thinking. I want to give you some insight to what parents are thinking, what new grads are thinking, and really what employers are expecting and hoping to see. As parents, and I mentioned before, I think we take our kids on this college tour and the university promises, like, we're going to make sure that they have this great job, but it doesn't always happen. It's not exactly the way they promised. We think that they're going to go to career services and take advantage of all, what the university has to offer. But the truth is that only 4 in 10 on average students actually go to career services while they're at school. We also have this feeling that maybe the university will help teach them skills like life skills, networking, but we're finding that it's not really taught as part of the curriculum in many situations. Sometimes there's a feeling parents are like, you know what, I have a great connection, or I know a friend and they're an executive in the field and I'm going to introduce my son or daughter to them, but somehow it doesn't always work out. Either our young adult is not ready for it, or our friends are just not able to help in the way that they thought. And the one thing I hear really often from parents is this concept of, I wish I knew. I wish I knew how early the process starts, how early maybe my student should be, just start doing some simple things to start the process. But I'm not sure how to help. And the other worry that comes up is like, is this too late? Am I too late? Are they too late? Did we miss the boat on the situation? From a grad's perspective, student and grads, they also start off, they go to school and they start off really confident. Either they're being told, you have a great major, or it's the perfect major and you're going to be in demand. Or, they're also of the generation where they're used to having success, where everybody wins or everybody gets a trophy. So they apply online, and they slowly start to realize it's a black hole and they don't hear back. Or if they do, they don't progress in the interview process, or sometimes the job is a scam and it wasn't what was told to them. So then, students say, well, maybe I should just fix my resume, or if I just have the right keywords, everything will be fine, or then I'll get found. Or there's sometimes this feeling of like, well, maybe more is better. Maybe I need to increase the volume of jobs I apply to. Maybe it's just a numbers game, and that's what I need to do. I also see young adults start to question, like, what should I even do with my life? There's either pressure from parents, from what they think they should do or what their friends are doing. And very often they'll just like throw spaghetti on the wall. They'll just apply to any kind of job, any type of role, with really no rhyme or reason. They start to question themselves. Do I have what an employer wants? Am I actually even good enough? The whole concept of imposter syndrome is really plaguing a lot of our young adults. And we cannot overlook mental health. Over 40% of young adults have reported feeling anxiety or depression. And how do we separate that from the normal setbacks that happen in a job search from actual real mental health issues that we need to take care of? I find very often they're scared, they're overwhelmed, they're afraid. Very often they're just stuck and they're not sure how to move forward. And then we have the employers. Employers really need good talent. Right now, there are 1.5 jobs open for every job seeker. That means there's 9.6 million open jobs right now. And employers are struggling to find the right talent with the right skills. But most importantly, they don't want to babysit. They don't want to hear from a candidate that, well, I deserve this job, or I want to be promoted in a year. They want someone who is willing to put in the work, but also is really focused on helping them or the company be successful in achieving their goals. The other trend I'm hearing about from employers is this concept of quiet hiring. It was actually in the Wall Street Journal the other week. And they're doing more looking internally for candidates. I think we can also define quiet hiring as they're not going to post the job opening on a job board. They're going to look for their own network of people that they know and trust to say, who do you know that could maybe fill this role? And we never see that job posted. So that's like the secret, hidden job market that there's people getting hired, but how do you become one of the people that are known or considered for that opportunity? They also want to see real world experiences from our students, whether it's in a part-time job, an internship, working in a class, working in a volunteer. They want to see how they're building these skills. But the good news is that they actually really do want young adults and grads to be part of their company. They want them to be able to learn their process and be able to mold them as part of that. So how do we bridge this gap? What's like the next step in this process to make it easier? So I'll pause there for a moment. I'm going to take a look and just see, because I have some thoughts about, then I'll talk about trends, but let me take a look at our Q&A just for a moment, and we'll see if we can answer some questions. So thanks, Lori, for asking this. So it says, when do you recommend that grads in various fields start looking for jobs? Is there a time that's too early for some industries? Great question. So I like to think that when you say looking for jobs versus also getting yourself ready, I think there's two parts to that. Are you actively searching, or have you also built up a foundation that allows you to be a candidate? I think there's an opportunity starting from freshman year. Now, by the way, if people are listening and saying, oh my gosh, my student just graduated, don't worry, I have some advice. But really, starting from freshman year, things as simple as get on LinkedIn, create a simple profile, make sure you connect with a professor, go to office hours, have someone that starts to know you and who you are, potentially could be a referral. By the way, professors also tend to know about internships. Also, get involved. I don't care if it's rec basketball or something related to your major. You need to start getting involved on campus, because that becomes your network. These people who are your friends, they're also people that you potentially could network with. And as you go through college, you want to start having more experiences. You want to practice going to the career fair so you can practice introducing yourself and talking about yourself. I think also connecting with alumni. Very often alumni love to talk to other students. And just the practice of reaching out to someone through the school portal or on LinkedIn saying, like you, I also went to the same school and I'd like to learn more about your role, or how you had the same major as me and how you got into that type of position. I think these are things that we need to have our kids start looking at early on, because when they come to the senior year and now they're waiting and rushing and then just like applying online, like there's a foundation. Some of this just takes a little bit of time and practice, but talking about yourself, going on an interview and feeling like you're successful and that you're kind of nailing it, that is not something that happens right out of the gate. You have to take time. You have to practice. You have to say it multiple times. You might stumble over your words the first couple of times. So I think you should start there. Now, let me go back to Lori's question about, certain industries. Yes, certain industries do recruit earlier than others. So I have some colleagues who are in HR at some of, very big investment banks and finance. And we have been finding, and consulting. So let's just speak this to like the finance consulting world, specific to the big name firms that we're familiar with, whether it's Morgan Stanley, whether it's EY, Deloitte. What we're finding is that they are trying to move back their recruiting process earlier and earlier. So even in sophomore year, at the beginning of sophomore year, they're going to start having recruiting sessions. It may not even be at the career fair. There may be like, hey, we're coming to campus, come to an information session to learn more about our company. They want to see who shows up. They want to start getting to know these candidates. And what we're finding is that they're starting to make offers to sophomores a year in advance for the junior year summer internship. So yes, from that standpoint and those industries, it is starting it could be an 18-month window where they're actually recruiting for junior year summer, and our sophomores have barely figured out, they're barely taking their core classes for their major. It's getting a little it's a little crazy, but this is what's happening because they're trying to compete for the best candidates. With all that being said, if that's not your field, even if it is in your field, companies are always hiring. And there's always an opportunity to network. It doesn't have to be formally through the recruiting process just at the university or just for the business school. They're looking for English majors. They're looking for people with wide, different, varied interests. I think it's about how do you put yourself out there and reach out to someone and network and have a conversation to express interest, to be curious. I think that's a big piece. And that's something that can start very early on. So I hope I answered that question sufficiently. Let me just grab another question here, and then I'll come back to some of the trends. Hi, Glenn. Thanks for asking the question. So my son is motivated enough, but no sense of urgency. He took our course. He's a junior looking for summer 24 internship help. So look, this is a tough one. And I mean, should I admit to everyone here that I am like hounding my own son who's a junior to go to the career fair and he is blowing me off, right? I mean, this is like the biggest insult. This is hard because they have to want it, right? We can encourage, we can show, we can say, look, this is what's happening. And a lot of times what's helpful is if their peers are doing things. Usually I find if like someone else is dressed in a suit on their way to the career fair and they see it, they're like, oh, I wonder where they're going today. Or maybe I should go grab my suit and go over there too. So I find peer pressure works really well. I think sometimes we need to let our kids go through the motion of what they think the right way is. I mean, it depends whether they're the relationship or whether they want to listen. Like, I'm not going to tell you that my kids always listen to me. I mean, it's a very hard, they're trying to exert their independence. They're at that age that that's what they are supposed to be doing. And sometimes they need to go through the process. They need to experience the pain of rejections. They need to experience the challenge of, I didn't hear back, or I thought that applying to 50 or 100 jobs was the way to go. And then realizing, oh, apparently whatever I thought was not working. At some point, it has to, like the light switch has to come on for them saying, whatever I'm doing is not working. And I need some help, whether it's from a parent, whether it's from a family member, a mentor, someone like us. But there's an element that they have to come to that conclusion that they feel like, I have tried on my own and I'm not getting it together. And it's the hard part. And I'll speak for myself too. It's not always on our schedule. It's not on my schedule, right? I'd like my kids to have internships and jobs and things light up, but just because I'm moving at that pace doesn't mean that they are. And we're here to help. And, a lot of what we do is also about instilling confidence in them. I think that's a big part of it. I think a lot of kids are very fragile and they don't think they have enough that's worthy for an employer, or they don't think they're good enough, or they haven't done enough. That's not true. Sometimes they just don't know how to position it. They don't know how to put their words together or introduce themselves in a way that they feel comfortable doing it. So that's a lot of we do, but I get it. I understand the frustration and the overwhelm, and you got to prompt them when you can, but sometimes we need to let them feel the pain of failure too, and let them kind of go through that a little bit. And I love all the questions. I want to come back to one of the things I want to talk about is like some of the trends that I see in the market, because I think this is really important for everyone to kind of be in tune with and understand what's happening. So one of the, I'll phrase it as like the bad news first versus the good news. So let's get the bad news over with. So if you saw the latest jobs report in September, the economy added over 330,000 jobs in September, which is positive. And it leaves the employment rate overall at about 3.8%, which is a sign that the labor market is strong. But there's still 9.6 million job openings. And I think the concern is that these elevated number of job openings does not always equate to an elevated number of real opportunities, the opportunities that we want for our kids. These could be hourly. These could be part-time. It's not necessarily all of like full-time jobs or in corporate settings or wherever it might be. So that's the concern there. I think, as I said before, this whole quiet hiring thing is becoming a real thing. So not only are companies focusing on internal talent, but they're also just saying, well, who's in my network? I'm not going to go through a big job search. I want people to come to me or see who I've met, because even as a hiring manager myself, it's such a headache, right? Who wants to go through hundreds of resumes? I'm like, oh, who do I know and trust, and who can I reach out to that might know of some candidates? So we'll talk more about that. The other thing we're seeing, according to a LinkedIn survey, overall hiring has dropped 29% since April 2022, while hiring for entry level has dropped about 32%. And of course, these layoffs in tech and finance that we had earlier in the year doesn't help. We also see situations where companies are having kids, even though they hire them, they're sitting on the bench. So whether it's like consulting firms, even like EY, where they've made the offer, now they're asking them, well, we want you to wait 9 months or a year, or you come in, but I don't really have a lot of work for you right now. I mean, we're definitely in a little bit of that tighter time frame. I've also seen where young adults are getting that first job, but then they're being laid off barely after a year of employment. I just had a client with that, at KPMG. So some of it's just the way that the market is right now, and they're starting over. It's funny. I asked the question. I'm like, well, how'd you get that first job? And it's like, oh, through a connection, or they didn't really interview a lot. So now it's like really starting over because they haven't gone through that search process. But here's one of the biggest things that come up over and over about a challenge right now is that class of 2023 is the COVID class. They were experiencing some effect of COVID since freshman year. And they've had more disruptions academically, fewer internships, more mental health challenges than the pre-COVID grads. I feel terrible. It's so challenging. So they're trying to catch up on a lot of things that just weren't part of their regular school experience. And we're also seeing, the average time to land a job in 2023 has increased to 6 months from 5.5 months in 2022. Employers are telling us too that they're citing that, what they think skills that college graduates lack. The things they think they lack the most are interpersonal skills, problem solving, leadership, written and oral communications, all the things that could be assumed from kids who didn't have as much time to be in person. So it's a tough one. Okay, but here's the good news. Let's move away from the bad news. The good news is that according to NACE, employers do plan to hire at least 4% more of the 23 graduates compared to 2022. We don't have the 24 forecast out just yet. And despite our increasing interest rates and a labor market that appears to be tightening, there's expectation, even in these few months, that there's going to be growth in the job market for the remainder of the year. So October, November, December is time where people are still ramping up for 2024. They're seeing increases in areas like supply chain and logistics, clearly anything in retail. So, we are seeing still strong and we still have opportunities that are out there. I think the other thing we're seeing is that organizations are starting to assess candidates based on their skills. And I think this is positive because there's a lot of skills that our young adults can acquire and build when they're in a college setting. So it's not always based on your credentials or your prior experience. We see that government agencies have increased looking for 36% more entry-level software workers, and the construction sector has 28% more. And we're seeing even LinkedIn has seen a 21% increase in job postings advertising specifically skills and responsibilities. In terms of growth industries, this is according to Fast Company, very similar to the ones that we've been seeing: education, healthcare, leisure and hospitality, logistics, sales, marketing, customer service. I mean, people have not had the most optimal experiences, and the goal is for companies to keep their customers happy, as well as construction and building. So just reinforcing. And the trends that we're seeing for 2024 from a student and grad perspective, we're seeing that the class of 2024 is really looking for employers who offer financial stability, more of that work-life balance, being able to do more remote work or hybrid, and the opportunity for upskilling and adapting to an AI-enabled workplace. I think that's a really interesting area. So it's not just saying, can I use ChatGPT to answer questions or help me with an essay or resume? It's how do we start to upskill and make sure our young adults are starting to understand how to use AI in a way that can be helpful to an organization. And companies are responding by, prioritizing retention. They want to provide more flexible work, and they really want, employees to help with employee engagement and morale. So what do? We have all of this very dizzying information. And I'd say the only guarantee that we have for 2023 and 2024 is constant change. And with uncertainty, the only thing one can control is their own actions. And how a candidate prepares and presents themselves is absolutely critical for success in the job search. Grads need to differentiate themselves, especially from those who have similar degrees and similar resumes. And they need to do this by defining their value to an employer and show that they can solve problems. And they need to know what skills they have that they can bring to an employer and who they are going to bring their skills to in a focused way. So when an employer says to them, "Tell me about yourself," they know exactly what they're going to say. And they're applying to companies that can really leverage their best talents. I've just found that preparation and understanding the goals of a company, which, by the way, you can find from any Google search, and really having the practice and knowing yourself and being persistent and being able to persevere, it's the people who continually show up and follow up and persist are the ones that are separating themselves. So there's my kind of overview of the market and what's happening. So let me get back to some more questions so I can really address what else is on your mind and if I brought up anything else. And by the way, you'll notice in the chat, there are services that Rachel has posted in terms of access to our free resources if you're interested in a consultation. And I see some questions there as well. So let me just start with the Q&A and then, okay. This is a really good question since we were just talking about AI. So how much is AI screening resumes playing a part in negatively impacting our grads' chances to interview? I think, well, let's just say even before AI, there was, you call it ATS, there's the automated tracking system, same thing. In the end, I don't think that's going to make or break a student getting hired, right? So if you think you have all the right keywords and the right buzzwords and the right skills, in the end, it will help. It's all, everything's part of like a total package, but on its own, it's not going to be the one thing that gets you hired. Just putting your resume in, even if it has all of the right keywords or AI words or whatever you think that is, and I know, and I'm pretty sure because I know I have some students here who could probably attest to it, it is not going to be the way that you ultimately get hired. You might find some people are interested. I actually just spoke with someone today. He's getting some hits, but the jobs are all scams. So now how do we figure that out? What I think is more important and more valuable is for our students to actually target the companies and then find 10, 20 people at a company who are doing the job that they actually want to be doing. So set aside the applications for a minute and the job boards. If you're going to really be strategic about it, you're going to think about what skills do I have? I'm a great writer, problem solving, leadership. I'm a critical thinker, whatever they might be. And then what's my story about those skills? If someone said to me, Beth, well, prove to me that you've demonstrated leadership. Tell me when you've done that, whether it was in school, in a club, in a project. So you have to have this ready. And then you got to proactively network. I'm going to start, you want to look for 10 people who work at different companies who are in entry level. They don't need to be networking with the vice president or the president to start. Find someone who graduated in the last 5 years, who's doing the job that you want, who went to the same school as you, and reach out to them via LinkedIn. It's very easy. You can send them a note saying, like you, I go to the same school. I'd love to spend 10 minutes to understand how you got into your role, how you transitioned there, and any advice you might have. And those conversations is what starts to make the turning point for students. Now, you can ask questions, but I think what's more valuable is not only saying, I'm curious about how you got there, but let me tell you about myself. Let me tell you about the skills that I have to offer and how I potentially could help your organization. And is there anyone that you could recommend or introduce me to that might be hiring that I could speak with? Now, at that juncture, they might say, you know what, go back and apply to this particular job. But when you do, I'm going to go grab your resume out of the pile and make sure it gets to the right person. To me, that is how you bypass the AI or tracking systems. It's through these direct networking conversations in conjunction with applying and someone looking for your resume and pulling it out of the pile and putting it on top. So I hope that answers your question. I don't mean to hug. I feel like I was kind of preaching there about my position, but I feel so strongly about it because there's so much energy and effort put into like creating the most perfect resume or the most perfect AI related. That's actually not what's going to move the needle. Okay. Hi, Hema. Okay, my son is graduating in December and does not have an internship related to his major, which is finance. He has a great GPA and is passionate about finance, but he's struggling to get a job. How do we move forward in a situation like this? I feel like his lack of internship experience is hurting him. So, by the way, this is so common. I mean, so many students do not get internships, right? For whatever reason, they need to take extra classes. They didn't think about it in time. They just wasn't on their radar or something to do. It doesn't always have to be this perfect alignment. You don't have to be this finance major in a business school to only get recruited by a certain kind of company. I think there's ways that you can show it yourself. Like, does he do his own investing? Is he part of a club? Or start doing something where you show how you are analyzing certain stocks, or you decided to do a discounted cash flow, or maybe you take a certification on your own that enhances your knowledge. It doesn't have to be this perfectly lined up thing where your major exactly correlates. In many cases, and we could probably speak for a lot of people here or parents are on the call, it doesn't matter what your major was, doesn't necessarily translate to the exact job that you're doing right now. I think you need to show, do you have experiences? What have you done to take the initiative to enhance your knowledge, enhance your learning? That I don't have the finance internship, but here's what I've done. Here's how I am enhancing my own knowledge. I joined a club. I'm part of this program. I did another certification. And I think the more that you do that, and you got to talk to people who are in the field that you want to get into and say, what else do you think I should do? Where else do you think I should go? Who should I talk to? There's so many free resources, I think, that we sometimes don't utilize, or even go back to a school, go back to a professor. I think there's opportunities, but they have to take the initiative. And I know that's scary for a lot of them. So hopefully that helps answer the question there. Okay. All right. My son is an English major and is concerned that it may not translate into a lot of opportunities. Should he look to get an MBA to better position himself? I love this question. I love English majors because, by the way, the ability to write and the ability to write well will serve you so well in your entire career. I don't care whether it's writing a brief, a summary, a proposal, a social media post, like the world needs good writers. The whole question about, do I get the MBA? So I had the opportunity, I was actually interviewed by the Wall Street Journal earlier this year or last year. And that was the exact topic of, because the market was so uncertain, should you just go get a master's degree? And my statement is, what is your goal with that? Why get the MBA? What is it that you think it will do? And my question is this, a master's degree is a really expensive procrastination tactic. It's a really expensive thing. If you're not 100% sure of how that will enhance your prospects. I mean, by the way, there was just an article the other day saying that MBAs are having a tough time right now. It's just not giving them the leverage they thought it would. I think you'd have to really understand, what are you trying to do? Like, let's start even before the MBA. What do you want to do? If you don't want to be an English professor, maybe you just need to do a better job of exploring, like, what are the possibilities of what I can do with an English major? Or let me see what other people who studied English from my same school, what their other potential jobs that they are doing. And you can find that very, very easily on LinkedIn. And under that resource guide that we link for free, there's a whole tip sheet about how you can utilize LinkedIn to connect with alumni and figure out what they're doing and have these great networking conversations. As someone who I also got my MBA, but I did it after I worked for about 4 or 5 years. And I felt like in the classroom, your ability to contribute and offer to the classroom is a lot more valuable than if you just came from school and you didn't have the work experience. So I would think really hard about that. I just, I think sometimes it is a delay tactic because they're afraid and the job search seems a little overwhelming and intimidating. But I don't know if that's the right, you got to do what's right for you, but you got to really do some soul searching about why you're doing that and what you hope to get out of it. All right, let me jump over here. Okay. All right. So I graduated, here's from a student, which is great. I graduated last year. I have lots of internship experience, but have been unsuccessful at landing a full-time job. What advice do you have about navigating that? How do I go about networking with potential employers? So I think I kind of hit on that, but I'll just restate. If you even had that, and it's funny, I hear this a lot. I have a lot of students who got the internship. They did what we were saying. And by the way, even if you hated it, it was still valuable because you learned something that you would not have learned, whether it's corporate culture or skills, or now you know what you don't like, so you don't waste your time getting a job in that area. If you had multiple internships and you're not sure how to navigate getting a job, again, you got to go back. What is it? What are the skills that you have? And we teach this concept. What are your core skills? What are the top 3 that you are the most competent, most skilled at, and you enjoy doing? And you can give an example of how you've done it. You can't say, look, if I said, oh, well, I'm amazing at research, but I really don't have any specific ways that I've shown that I've done research, then I'm just pulling something out of the sky. If I said, well, I've demonstrated leadership, or I know how to manage people, or, I'm going to refer back to, could be a campus experience. I could have worked in a part-time job. I could have done something in retail. I could have been a camp counselor. It doesn't have to be fancy or elaborate. It's how you explain the skill that you had and how it potentially could translate to help that employer. The other piece is you got to get targeted. I think one of the issues I see is that sometimes when I say to a recent grad, what are you applying to? And they say, well, I'm applying to everything because I'm just seeing, I'm just putting it all out there. And that is actually not what employers want. But they see that you're not clear about the field or the area or position, they're going to know that you're kind of not so serious about it. They actually want you to be somewhat focused. Now, not super niche down, but at least in an industry to say, you know what, I'm really going to focus on mechanical engineering roles, or I'm really going to focus on wealth management or certain aspects of these fields. Because when you start to narrow in, it also makes your list a lot easier. So if you said, I really want to focus on mechanical engineering roles, I'm going to look for people who are in a role that, and by the way, using LinkedIn, and I love it. And again, go use the resource that I have. It's for free. We even have a video course for free. And look for fellow alum who are in a entry-level role in the area that you want to get into. And you want to talk to them. I think we're just skipping this whole piece where nobody's having a real conversation with anybody who's actually doing the job. There's a lot of assumptions that are being made about what you think it might look like to work there or what you heard. But unless you speak to someone who actually is doing it, you actually don't really know. It doesn't matter how much you search it online or you look at a social media post. You got to talk to a real live person for someone to give you some insight. So I really think about what you're doing from a networking standpoint and how targeted you are in doing that. Okay, let me go over to the chat because I have some things in the chat as well. All right, I'd be interested in your perceptions on the assessments being given to applicants. No feedback is given that I'm aware of, which doesn't help the candidate. Yeah. So there are a couple things that are going on. So we see one-way interviews, we can get into that, but we also see sometimes these assessments. It could be a coding challenge, it could be a technical challenge, it could be in finance, can you do a discounted cash flow or some kind of mathematical puzzle, depends if it's engineering. And that's a challenge, right? You don't know what's coming. But if you go to certain job boards, even like a Glassdoor more than Indeed, there's other people who have talked about these challenges and what to expect when you go into these kinds of roles. And more, lots of universities are being given access to give these to students through career services ahead of time. Now, the challenge is if you don't get the feedback, that's not great. Now, I just want to clarify assessment, meaning like a quiz or a puzzle versus assessments for what kind of career you should go to. That's something totally different. But if it's the more of like a company trying to get a sense of how you solve a problem, whether it's mathematical or scientific or financial or some kind of modeling, that's something that you have to start. If you're really going to get into that industry, you've got to, there's definitely resources, and we've helped with that too, that there's ways where you can just practice those kinds of quizzes and those kinds of testing. So I hope that helps. All right. Hi, Katie. I went to career fairs while an undergrad and was not successful in landing a job, despite my great GPA, experience, and willingness to learn. What advice do you give on landing a job out of college? Well, first of all, I want to commend you for going to the career fair. And even though it may not have yielded a result, I think sometimes it's not your fault that a lot of students do not understand how to navigate even a career fair. You walk into this big size, big gymnasium or whatever, big room, and there's all these tables and there's hundreds of kids and people are waiting online. And you're like, oh my gosh, what am I doing? Am I waiting online for 30 minutes to talk, or, an hour to speak to Disney or to speak to Apple, or what am I going to say? You get up there, you have only a few minutes to kind of like give your pitch, and there's not a lot of practice that goes into it. So I really commend you for going. And by the way, if anyone has a student who's a freshman, sophomore, junior, even senior, you should go every single year, because the more you practice, the more you get comfortable. And by the way, employers like to see repeat students come up to their tables and talk to them, because it makes them really look like you're really interested. Even though you've had internships and you had a good GPA and you went to the career fair, kind of same advice. You got to do a little self-reflection. What are your skills and where do you want to bring them? And you got to talk to people who are in a field that you're interested. Maybe you're just curious. You can start to investigate. And if you start to realize, that's not really for me, that's okay. You actually just saved yourself a lot of time by not wasting time applying to those kinds of jobs. But you have to be honest with yourself about, I hear this a lot too. And sometimes students will say, well, I went into business because my mom's an accountant and my dad's in finance, but I don't really love it, or it's really not my thing. And look, I get it. As parents, we're trying to encourage them. They don't always know at 18 what to do. But if you don't like it, you've got to figure out, okay, this is what I don't like. And this is the kind of thing that I do like. And where can I bring that? Or what other fields have the kinds of skills that I think I'm good at? It's not too late. It's just a matter of getting in and having these conversations with people to best figure that out. So I hope that helps you, Katie. Okay, this is a long one. Let me just I want to make sure I jump around, because I don't want to kind of be to the point here. Okay. And then just a clarification. So thanks, Lori. So has a marketing major. Grad is not seeing a lot of opportunities out there yet, because marketing tend to hire closer to graduation. So yeah, I think there is a cycle. I think marketing is definitely later than the financial and consulting. I know a lot of kids get really worked up because the financial and consulting kids might have job offers by Thanksgiving. That is not typical of engineering. That is not typical of marketing and a lot of other fields. Not to say it couldn't happen, but yes, I find a lot of more of those recruiting and official, where they're really looking, happens to be usually in the next year or in the spring of when they're graduating. So, but don't discount the conversations, and don't discount, showing interest and networking and having conversations and doing some research. Don't just wait until then. A perfect example, I had a client said to me, he's like, I'm really not happy in my current job. He just graduated a year ago. I'm thinking of talking to my manager about changing locations or maybe changing jobs in the spring. I said, why are you going to wait until the spring? He's like, well, that's kind of the time that I want to do it. I said, but you know what? Right now is when companies are planning their budgets for 2024. And why don't you have the conversation now? Why don't you just share, hey, I've accomplished this. These are my skills. I think I can do other things, and I'd really like to do it in a different division. And sure enough, the manager's like, yeah, let's get that in motion right now, because I need somebody sooner than later. So I think it just depends on the match, but I don't wait to have the conversations, have them sooner because you never know. Okay. All right. Hi, Sheila. So my son has a part-time writing job that is a stepping stone, social media writing experience. How long should he stay in the in-between job before applying to the real job that he wants? So I don't know. I'm assuming he's a grad. And I think sometimes you just have to figure out, is he content? Is he learning? Is he being challenged? Does he have enough hours? Is he need to make a certain amount of money? I think all of those things come into play. Sometimes a stepping stone job is a perfectly appropriate solution if you haven't had an internship or you haven't had experience in the field that you want to get to. I guess the question becomes, what's next? What do you really want to be doing? I think it's ideal to have a part-time job and be looking for the job that you want. So you have some money coming in, you have some stability, you're having some success in doing the role, but you might also have available time to do some research on what's out there, or start talking to companies, or start doing some connections with your alumni and to see what's out there. I think that's the ideal time, as opposed to it being sequential. And I know sometimes our kids are very binary of like, I'm doing this now, so I can't do anything else. It's like, no, you can actually do both at the same time. It's also like when they say, oh, I already had just one interview, so I'm not going to interview with 3 other people. It's no, you can have these things going on. That's how you increase your chances of actually getting something and without having big gaps in your employment. So I would say, try to do it at the same time if it makes sense. Okay. All right. So hi, Christina. So I graduated in May of 2022, took a gap year to travel, work, volunteer, and I'm just starting my job search in genetics. Any advice for STEM? So first of all, I think that's phenomenal that you did that and you've had that experience. And I'm pretty confident, I don't know you, that you've probably learned a lot during that gap year and during the volunteering and during your skills. But if you really want to come back to what you studied in college, you need to start understanding, maybe I want to get experience in a lab. Maybe I need to do some research for somebody. Maybe it's a combination of some things. So to me, it's like, you got to get back in touch with either a professor who you knew from college or some of your peers or classmates that are also in genetics, see what they're doing, start talking to them and understand what's possible. I think people are more understanding now of gap years and taking the time off. And look, we've had a lot go on since COVID. It's just, you got to get yourself back in there. And how do you start having those conversations and thinking about, well, what did you do when you were in college that you were leveraging that major? Maybe you did work in a lab then, or maybe you did have a project that you want to talk about. Maybe there's something that you can start to engage in now, and it kind of gets you back into that cycle. So hopefully that gives you some ideas. All right, so let me jump over here. All right, so how to help a kid that has a unique combination of job skills, such as strong in biology and science, and very outdoorsy and adventuresome, willing to travel, hard physical worker, doesn't want to be stuck at a lab or desk job, and wants to interact to help people, animals, planet. How can I help the soon-to-be graduate boy that has a biology degree and does not have a direct path to an instant job? I guess if I knew how to give instant jobs, I would. It sounds like he has a lot of passions and a lot of interest. And it's funny, I see this a lot. We've seen a lot of bio majors over the year who just are like, I just don't want to be a doctor, or that's just not what was meant for me. And they're trying to figure out, how do I leverage this path where I love the science, or I really enjoy, environment, or how do I bridge that all together? And I think it's just trying to again, you have to do a little bit of searching. And I think understanding, where do you want to go with this? Now, a lot of times our kids might say, I don't know what I want to do. I know I get that a lot. But I think even as a parent to say, well, let's think about what you're really good at and what you really enjoy doing. Forget what you studied for a minute. And I know it might be hard for us as parents to let that unhook And I know our kids are afraid to tell us that too, for sure. But sometimes we just got to say, like, let's just set everything aside. If you could have your dream job, or if you could be doing something, whether it's working with your hands, working with people, working with science, working in a lab, like, what is that? What maybe might be? And I think give them a chance to express themselves of what they really want. Things might start to evolve. He said he works with animals. I mean, maybe, there's a whole world of, like, not only, veterinarian, but even like biotech, or whether it's the food supply for pets or foods, or just, there's so many angles now to how biology is being used in science and technology and pharma. I think there's definitely lots of options. It's just taking a little time to investigate what's out there. All right, let me come back here. I love all these questions. This is amazing. Okay. All right. Hey, Brandon, and I'm glad you joined tonight. So he's your recent grad, having trouble switching careers from construction management into tech sales. Despite adjusting my resume with transferable skills, I'm still finding it difficult to get interviews. What else can I do to get traction moving forward? So I know I sound like a broken record, is that it doesn't matter that you made all the right, maybe you put better words or phrases, or you're leveraging maybe some things where you were previously had sales roles, or you're selling. But to me, you gotta have a conversation with somebody who's actually in a tech sales role. Like, talk to a real live human. And it could be someone just graduated in the last year or two who got a job. It doesn't have to be a scary conversation with someone who's maybe the vice president of a company. Reach out to either, fellow friends, alumni, resource, parents, friends. But you got to understand what people in tech sales. Now, ironically, you and I can have a conversation offline. I started my career in tech sales, so I could probably have that conversation with you. But you got to really seek out, what are they looking for? Because probably in construction, I don't know, did you have to interact with people? Did you have to do customer service? Did you have to meet a deadline, or make sure you understood requirements, or solve problems? Because those could be very similar skills that you need to use in sales, and how you present it, and making sure people feel comfortable with what you're offering. So I think there's ways to do that. You just got to do a little bit more research. And if you want to message me offline, I'm happy to speak with you about it as well. Okay, I've got another message here. Okay, I got that. So I think we kind of got a lot of the questions. So let me just scrolling here to make sure I didn't miss anything. Okay. I mean, these are phenomenal questions, and I get it. And I can sense the concern, or the overwhelm. I understand. I really do understand, because, sometimes there's this feeling of like, I'm stuck, or we feel like my kid is stuck. They're not listening to me. They don't want to take my advice. They're in their room. They tell me that they're applying to all these jobs, yet nothing's really happening. It's tough. It's a tough time. And I will just say this as well. It is really important to not underestimate mental health, because sometimes I'll get a call from a family or a parent who says, I don't get it. My kid, they're not motivated. They're just kind of lazy. They're not doing anything. And I'm so frustrated. And I think we need to just make sure we're giving them every opportunity to express themselves, to say, you know what? I've had a number of rejections, or whatever. Or sometimes the job search can be depressing. You may not be fully depressed, but it could be depressing. Or there may be like, you know what, I'm just having a lot of anxiety about contacting somebody or sending a letter. I know a lot of kids are just paralyzed when it comes to sending a cover letter. Like, I don't know what to write. They're going to think I'm not, whatever. There's a lot of fear and anxiety. And I just want to make sure that even if you're a student listening, that it's okay. You got to share with somebody what you're feeling, and you got to get help if you need it. And as parents, we need to really make sure we're checking in with them, and that they're okay. And that it's not just, I can't find a job. It's more than that. It's that they're really maybe overwhelmed with something else, because it is so, it's just pervasive right now. And I think we need to be really sensitive to that. All right. And we're almost with 5 minutes left. I'm going to answer one more question. And then if there's other questions, I'll give my email. You can send it to me, and I'll be happy to get to you. So the question is, how important are cover letters? Here's my feeling about cover letters. If you have the opportunity to write one, you should. I'm sure there's mixed people will tell you, I don't look at them, I don't read them. I think it's always good. It's a nice thing to do to summarize some additional things, but without repeating on your resume, to show that you have an understanding of the company, you understand how your skills align and why you're a good fit. It's like your chance to sell yourself, because you don't really get to do that on the resume. The resume is like linear in that it's only talking about you. On the cover letter, you can say, I understand the goal of your company is to do this, or to grow in this way, or to capture this kind of market. And I feel that my skills are perfectly aligned to help you or can help contribute to that. And I just think it's a good thing to do. I think you should do it. And we recommend it. And it doesn't have to be this multi-page long thing, but I think it goes a long way in reaching out. And I'll tell you one other thing that I think is more important than cover letters is the thank you letter. I cannot tell you how many times a student will say, well, I spoke to somebody, or I had an interview, or I never heard back. And I said, did you send a thank you note? No, I didn't think to. And I am telling you, I'll tell you, I hold it in very high regard. I know recruiters have told me, I don't care how amazing they thought the candidate was. If the candidate does not write a thank you letter, they are not moving forward. And it can be literally like 1 or 2 sentences. So the most important letter is the thank you letter of all the letters, because it's those who sent the letters, because so many don't send them. I can't even tell you how frustrating it is, but it's simple. And again, we teach that as well. So always send a cover letter. All right. So let me kind of recap, and I'm so thrilled so many of you hung in for all this time. So a couple things. If you want to learn more about how we help a student and grad, or grad who's even been out a couple years, or even someone who's, a sophomore, anywhere from 19 to 29, whether it's an internship, first job, second or third job, I'd be happy to have a complimentary consultation. We put it in the link, nextgreatstep.com/schedule consult. We'll speak with a parent alone, a student alone. We'll talk to you together, whatever works for you. We are starting our next group coaching. We run group coaching every month. It is so successful. Our students tell us they love it, because you know what the best thing about it is? You have this camaraderie with other grads and peers who are going through the exact same thing, because everyone thinks they're the only one. And of course, we know that is not true. Our next group is starting the second week of November. We're now accepting registrations for that. We also offer private coaching, those we do on a rolling basis. I encourage you to access our free resources, everything from how to ace the career fair, how to have a great resume, how to have a good LinkedIn profile, how to use LinkedIn, how to navigate from college to career. And once you opt into one, you get access to all of them. So I'm really thrilled to be able to provide, resource to all of you. If there's any questions that I was not able to answer, you can email me. Rachel just put it in the chat. It's beth@nextgreatstep.com. And we're here to help. That is our main goal, is that our sole focus is to help young adults feel confident, get clear in what they want to do, and help them land the job that they deserve. So thank you, everyone. I hope you have a great night. I will record this. You'll have access to it as well. But thank you so much for joining, and we'll be in touch. Take care.